Foreign currency financial statements translation will be our module 3 for the prelim period. Okay, and as compared to the previous discussions, we are still dealing with foreign currency. However, this time, we're going to deal with financial statements as a whole as compared to just per transaction. Okay, we're going to translate the entire financial statements based on two methods. Right? I mean, we have to identify which of the two methods are we going to use to account for the translation or to process the translation. So before that, let's have some key definitions. We have exchange difference. It is the difference resulting from translating a given number of units of one currency into another currency at different exchange rates. You will notice later that we are not just going to use one exchange rate. So meron tayong tinatawag na current rate, historical rate, and also average rate. Okay, so those are the three usual rates that we are going to use in translating our financial statements. So the question there is, alin sa mga exchange rates na yon yung gagamitin natin? And because we are using different exchange rates, at the end of our translation, mapapansin nyo na hindi magiging balanse yung ating balance sheet. Okay? So if the balance sheet is not balanced, we are going to have yung parang tinatawag nating foreign currency translation adjustment. So it will be a balancing figure or balancing amount na mako-compute natin later on. Okay? Now, for the foreign operation, it is also important, class, to identify your foreign operation. No? It will trigger kung anong method yung gagamitin natin. Is it method 1 or method 2? Okay, pag sinabi nating foreign operation, ito yung, it can be a subsidiary, an associate, joint venture, or branch. Okay, so for example, in our problems here, we are going to assume that the parent company is in the Philippines. Okay, so parent company is in the Philippines, and then meron tayong a branch abroad. So that is considered a foreign operation. So let's just assume that meron tayong branch sa Singapore. Okay? So yung branch natin sa Singapore, that is considered a foreign operation. Now later also we have to deal with functional currency. Okay? May definition tayo later. What is functional currency? So saan nakadepende ang ating functional currency? For example, class, if you are a company here in the Philippines and you are not dealing with foreign currency, okay, your functional currency is Philippine peso. Okay, so ganun lang siya kadali, no? Yung mga problems ninyo that is not dealing with foreign currency, the functional currency is also the presentation currency. Okay, we present our financial statements in Philippine peso, and that is also our functional currency. Paano mo ba malalaman kung functional currency mo siya? So these are the criteria. Yun ang ginagamit natin as our sales price for goods and services. So kapag pumunta ka sa mga malls or sa mga supermarkets, no, makikita ninyo na yung mga presyo is denominated in Philippine peso. Okay, of course there are some instances na US dollar, pero mga ano lang yun. Majority pa rin is denominated in Philippine peso. That's why our functional currency is considered Philippine peso here in the Philippines, no? And also kung currency that mainly influences labor, materials, and other costs. Kapag nagbayad ka ng tauhan mo, di ba, kung meron ka mga employees, you pay them in Philippine peso. Kung bibili ka ng materials and other costs, you pay the supplier in Philippine peso. Okay, so these are some determinants of what is a functional currency in a country. Okay. Now, standalone entity, pag sinabi nating standalone entity, ito yung parang an entity that is independent. So usually class yung mga businesses dito sa Philippines, mga standalone entity naman yan if they are created here in the Philippines, no? Of course, meron tayo din mga may mga nag-i-invest din dito, okay, which are considered foreign operations or mga foreign subsidiaries natin. Okay, now let's compare functional currency versus presentation currency. As I've told you a while ago, usually the businesses here in the Philippines, their functional currency is also their presentation currency. So when it's like, for example, when a business reports to the BIR, it uses the Philippine peso in reporting its transactions. Okay. So usually, or in most cases, no, standalone entities presentation currency is also its functional currency. So kailan ba nag-iiba? Nag-iiba yan, class, kapag foreign operations ang pinag-uusapan. Okay, so later on, papakita natin yung difference in terms of functional currency ng method 1 and method 2. Okay, but then again, yung mga dating ginagawa ninyo or dating kino-compute, functional currency is the same with presentation currency. So functional currency is peso. It is also presented in peso. That's the usual. But for this case, syempre, meron tayong mga foreign operations, so that will differ. By the way, class, for this topic, no, we are not dealing with hyperinflationary economy because it is already discussed in your intermediate accounting. So ang pinag-aaralan natin ngayon is yung mga nasa normal economy lang. Okay, yung mga hindi or not in a hyperinflationary economy. Okay, so we have two methods again. We have method 1, which is translation from the functional currency into the presentation currency. So dun sa binigay kong example, no? The functional currency is, let's say, for example, in Singaporean dollars, okay? And then the presentation currency should be in Philippine peso. Okay, we're going to translate yung Singaporean dollars amount into Philippine peso amount. So basically, that's what we are going to do in this topic, no? The foreign currency FS translation. So the question is, what exchange rates are we going to use? Okay. So for the first method, we call it FCPC or functional currency into the presentation currency. Sometimes we call it the closing rate method. Sometimes we call it the current rate method. Sometimes net investment method or translated method. So huwag kayong papalito, lahat ng yon pare-pareho lang. So we are dealing with method 1. Okay? Later, di-discuss ko ito na mas maganda kasi i-compare yung method 1 versus method 2. Okay? So introduce ko muna yung ano ba yung method 1. So these are the possible names for method 1. Yung method 2 naman, okay? So method 2, translation into the functional currency. We sometimes call it the temporal method or remeasurement method. Okay, so those are the two names for method 2. Huwag lang kayo papalito kasi meron ding temporal method is for method 2. Yung isa is translated method. So baka malito kayo, no? Okay, so let's compare their difference in an Excel file. Okay. So this column, or yung first column after the description, this is what we call method 1. No? The other column is method 2. So in our first column, that is yung closing or the current rate method, tinatawag ko siyang independent. Okay, then the method 2, that's the temporal or remeasurement method, I am calling it dependent. Okay, saan ko ba galing yun? Because class, in identifying whether to use method 1 or method 2, ano ba yung gagamitin natin sa dalawang methods, we have to look at the foreign operations. Okay? We have to consider the foreign operations. So if the foreign operations is independent, okay, that means it is not an integral part of the operations of the parent. No? Pag sinabing not integral, hindi siya ganun ka-importante. Ibig sabihin, pwede siyang mabuhay ng sarili niya. Like kung nag-close yung parent company dito sa Philippines, pwede pa rin mag-operate yung foreign operations. Okay, it can operate independent of the parent. Kaya tinawag ko siyang independent dito. Okay? So kapag independent daw yung foreign operation, then we use method 1. If the foreign operation is integrated, ibig sabihin it's highly dependent, nakadepende siya sa parent's operations. Kapag nagsara yung parent, more or less the foreign operation will also suffer or will also close. Okay, so pag integrated siya or dependent, then we use method 2. So actually sasabihin ng problem, no, kung independent ba yung foreign operations or integrated. Now, in terms of the functional currency, sometimes hindi sinasabi ng problem na independent yung foreign operations. Sometimes sasabihin ng problem ganito. The functional currency is the local currency unit. So for example, yung foreign operations natin sa Singapore, if assuming that it is independent, no, the functional currency of our foreign operations at Singapore is also the local currency unit or the LCU, which is Singaporean dollars. Kasi kaya naman niya parang mabuhay ng sarili niya. Independent yung operations na yan. Kaya pwede siyang gumamit ng local currency unit, which is Singaporean dollars, doon sa as a functional currency niya. Now, kapag kunyari, hindi sinabi ng problem na integrated yung foreign operation. So sasabihin ng problem, no, that the functional currency of the foreign operations at Singapore is at Philippine pesos. So ibig sabihin nun, hindi niya ginagamit yung Singaporean dollars, which is the LCU, as its functional currency because it is dependent doon sa parent company. Okay, integrated kasi siya. That's why the functional currency is still in pesos. Okay, so napansin niyo kapag LCU yung functional currency, we are using method 1. Kapag nakasunod sa parent's currency, which is in our problems, it's Philippine peso because the parent company is in the Philippines, we're going to use method 2. So later papakita ko sa inyo yung mga statements ng problem para ma-identify ninyo kung kailan gagamitin ng method 1, kailan gagamitin ng method 2. Okay, now, let's compare the difference in terms of anong rates yung gagamitin. Okay, so under method 1 or the closing or current rate method, yung independent, you will notice that all assets and liabilities, okay, hindi all balance sheet items, ha? All assets and liabilities will be recorded at the current rate. Okay? Yung current rate class, minsan tawag natin dyan closing rate. Ayun nga. So pareho lang yun, no? Yeah, so current rate or closing rate for assets and liabilities. For equity kasi, meron siyang ibang rule. So balikan natin yan later. Okay, so going back, assets and liabilities, whether monetary or non-monetary, under the method 1 or the closing or current rate method, we record them using the current rate. Method 2 naman, or the temporal or remeasurement method, okay, we only use the current or closing rate when we are dealing with monetary assets and liabilities. Okay? If the items or the assets and liabilities is non-monetary and it is measured at historical cost, okay, then we use the historical rate, which is on the date of transaction. Okay? So may exception yan, no? Usually class, prepaid items, kunyari prepaid rent, okay, prepaid advertising, okay, and other prepaids, they are considered non-monetary items, except for prepaid interest. Okay, so prepaid interest is accounted for as monetary assets. Okay? Ninote ko yan kasi we have a problem later that will deal with prepaid interest. Okay, meron din tayong non-monetary items at fair value. Okay, kapag non-monetary items at fair value, we are going to record them using historical rate. Okay? Kapag revalued fixed assets, if you remember your revaluation surplus, we use the date of revaluation as our historical rate. Okay, but for the trading securities and inventories carried at replacement cost, no, ito yung mga assets or non-monetary items at fair value. We use the fair value determination date. Okay, fair value determination date. So, ba't kailangan mo siyang i-highlight or kulayan ng red? Okay. Later class, may problem tayo dyan, no? Pero discuss ko lang. Kahit sinabi niyang historical rate, okay, you will notice later that even though historical rate ang pinapagamit under method 2, we're still going to use the current rate for, especially for trading securities and yung mga measured at fair value. Okay? Bakit sir? Bakit current rate sabi historical rate? Because class, ang sabi naman dito, historical rate, which is the fair value determination date. Okay? Eh di ba class, kapag nag-record tayo at fair value, we are adjusting the values usually at year end. Di ba? We are recording their fair values at year end. Okay? So ano ba yung fair value natin at year end? Yung fair value at the year end natin, that is also our current rate. Okay? Because current rate is also our closing rate. So mamaya babalikan natin to. So take note of that. Prepaid interest, that's the exception sa prepaid items. It will be accounted for just like monetary assets and liabilities. Pati yung mga non-monetary items at fair value, except for revalued fixed assets, no? Itong nakaret na to, trading securities and inventories carried at replacement cost, okay, that will be accounted for just like monetary assets, no? Kasi nga, kapag nag-fair value tayo, gagamitin din natin yung year-end na rates, di ba? So essentially, the historical rate dun sa mga fair value determination date is equal to the closing rate. Okay? Balikan natin yan later. Okay, so yun yung for the assets and liabilities. Now for the equity accounts, okay, take note ha, equity accounts hindi current. No, baka puro current ang ilagay niyo dito sa method 1. So hindi siya current for the majority of the equity accounts. Okay, they will be recorded or they will be translated using the historical rate, which is the date of investment. Kung kailan ba na-invest or kailan nangyari yung equity transaction. Like kung nag-issue ka ng stocks, common stocks or ordinary shares, magkano yung rate nila during the date of investment. Okay? So kung mapapansin nyo class, no, it covers method 1 and method 2. Ibig sabihin nun, either of the two methods, pagdating sa majority ng equity accounts, we use the historical rate, which is on the date of investment. Okay, pareho sila in this case. Now, for the beginning retained earnings, it will depend on the ending balance of last year. So kung year 1 ang kino-compute ninyo, okay, kung year 1 ang kino-compute, syempre 0. Pag year 2 naman, depende kung magkano yung na-compute ninyong ending balance ng year 1 based on the translated amounts. Okay? Now, for the dividends natin, historical rate din siya, which is usually the date of declaration. So kung hindi sinabi yung date of declaration, we are going to assume that the date of payment is also the date of declaration. Okay? Alright, so those are the differences and the rules for balance sheet items. Now let's have our income statement items. So inati natin siya sa dalawa, no? We have yung mga related to non-monetary items and yung mga related to monetary items. So meron tayo dito, for example, yung cost of sales. Related yan sa non-monetary items, which is inventories. Same as with the depreciation of plant assets and amortization. So yung depreciation expense and amortization expense, pagdating sa method 2, okay, we use historical rate, which is kung ano yung ginamit natin dito sa non-monetary items. Okay? So that is the date of transaction historical rate. Yan. So historical rate. But for the monetary items, parehas sila. Parehas sila na historical rate talaga dapat. Kaso lang, isipin nyo class, no, yung daily sales ninyo sa Singapore, are you going to translate daily sales into the Philippine peso? Parang ang ano naman nun, ang hassle naman yon kung daily sales natin is, syempre iba-iba yung exchange rates, no? Iba-iba yung current rate per day. So it is impractical to translate them, no? Using the historical rate on the daily basis. That's why for problem-solving purposes and for practical reasons, we can use the average rate for monetary items. Okay? So yan, current rate, historical rate, and average rate. Pero kung method 1 yan, lahat yan, whether related to monetary items or non-monetary items, we're going to use the average rate. Okay? Then finally, for their difference or for their key difference, yung resulting difference, which is ito yung nasa key definition natin kanina, yung tinatawag nating exchange difference. So exchange or resulting difference. Kapag method 1, we record it under the balance sheet, okay, OCI. Pag method 2, we record it under the income statement or in our P&L or profit or loss. Okay, so we call it remeasurement gain or loss, parang yung foreign currency transaction gain or loss. Now, if it is method 1, diba, initially it will be OCI. Pag OCI kasi, it is a permanent account, no? Cumulative siya na iipon. So, kailan siya mawawala sa balance sheet? Kailan siya matatransfer sa P&L? Okay, so from OCI going to PNL, mare-reclassify siya upon disposal of the foreign operation. So for example, nagsara na or binenta na, no, or for whatever reason na madi-dispose siya, okay, then that's the time that you're going to transfer the OCI na remeasurement gain or loss going to the PNL. Okay? So parang yung ginagawa natin sa cash flow hedge class, since this is an OCI item, if in our year 1 we recognize a remeasurement gain, okay, gain OCI, then by year 2 we should recognize loss or net loss. What we have to do is reverse nyo muna yung yung remeasurement gain OCI before we record yung remeasurement loss OCI. Okay, just like in the cash flow hedge. Okay, so let's have some problems, short problems related to foreign currency FS translations. Yes, I'm going to provide you with these handouts now, or our third handout. We have a graph or a chart here. Ayan nga. So nandito yung method 1 natin and method 2. So yung nasa right side is yung hyperinflationary economy, which we are not going to discuss because this is part of your intermediate accounting. No? Ang focus natin is on the left side. Then to identify if it is method 1 or method 2. Okay, method 1 kapag foreign operations is independent. Method 2 kapag integral or highly dependent. And then also in terms of functional currency, kapag independent siya, pwede niyang gamitin yung local currency unit. Pero kapag integral or yung method 2, kailangan niyang sundan yung parent's currency, which in this case, the parent is a Philippine company. Therefore, Philippine peso pa rin ang functional currency. Okay, then yung remeasurement gain or loss under method 1 is recorded under OCI. Under method 2, it's recorded under our profit or loss. If it is a currency of a third country, like hindi siya Philippine peso, hindi rin siya local currency unit na dollars, okay? Let's see, it's pounds, rupees, or whatever. It will be accounted for as, okay, remeasure first and then translate. Okay? So
Sir, di po yata kita yung ano,
ay sorry,
yung sa screen niyo
hindi ko
po.
pala na-transfer sa ano. No? Thanks for the notice. Yeah, ito yung graph or yung chart na sinasabi ko. So on the right side, hyperinflationary, which we are not going to deal with in this module. Ito yung focus natin, no? Yung left side. And so nandito yung method 1, kapag independent ang foreign operations. Okay, method 2, kapag integral. Okay, in terms of functional currency, parang yung sample kanina, kapag independent yung operation, pwedeng gamitin or gagamitin natin yung local currency unit, which is in dollars. Okay? Kapag integral naman, o yung nakadepende siya sa operation ni parent, kailangan niyang sundan yung parent's currency, which in this case is Philippine peso. Because the parent here is a Philippine company. In terms of the remeasurement gain or loss, under method 1, we record it under OCI. Under method 2, we record it under our net income. If it is a third country, for example, the currency is in pounds, rupees, or other currencies that is not Philippine peso nor dollars, what we have to do is first to remeasure it and then second to translate it. Okay? So parang it's a combination of the two methods. Okay, so I'm going to give it to you. This is actually a long problem, no? it's like a complete presentation of translation. So hindi ko i-discuss to for today. Please do read it kasi may solution naman to. No? Pakita ko lang yung solution. So in the solution, you will notice this is method 1. Yan. So yung monetary natin and not, yung mga income statement items, lahat yan, average. Kasi method 1 ang ginagamit. Okay? Pero kung titingnan ninyo yung method 2, ito yung method, ito yung method 2. Okay? Hindi lahat. Okay, hindi lahat average. Mapapansin niyo meron tayo dito historical, which is the depreciation expense. Okay, because it is related to a non-monetary item. Okay, and also under method 2, kung mapapansin nyo, blanco yun nandito sa cost of goods sold kasi meron tayong schedule. So bakit may schedule pa? Kasi mixture siya. Mixture siya ng average and historical. Ito yung schedule niya. Ayan. Okay, kasi yung beginning inventory is historical, pero yung purchases and ending inventory, they are both average. So combination siya, kaya kailangan ng separate schedule for the cost of goods sold. Okay? And so again, method 1, lahat average. Pero method 2, kailangan mo i-consider yung non-monetary items related to yung mga historical rates natin. Okay, tingnan natin ulit, balikan natin yung method 1. Okay, tingnan niyo yung mga yung assets and liabilities natin. They are all current. Okay? But under method 2, hindi lahat current. Yung mga non-monetary items natin, they are recorded using the historical rate. Okay, but for the equity, parehas sila. Equity, beginning retained earnings and dividends, they use the same rates. Okay? Sir, ano yung BA? What's BA? BA, that's the balancing amount. Okay, the balancing amount. Because class, we are using different rates. That's why when we get the total or when we convert it into pesos, hindi magiging balance yung balance sheet natin. So you will be able to compute a difference or you will be able to see a difference. Yun ang tinatawag nating remeasurement gain or loss. Or we also call it foreign currency translation, reserve gain, okay? OCI, kasi method 1 to. Okay, ito yung ano natin, exchange difference, no? This is our resulting difference. Okay, this is method 1, kaya OCI. Sa method 2 natin, saan siya? Ito. So method 2, we call it remeasurement loss kasi it is reported under under profit or loss under method 2. Okay? And so that's the long problem. Ito na yung solution actually, no? Then of course the dividends historical siya. So let's have some some short problems para makita ninyo ano yung mga pwede itanong kapag short problem. Kahit man lang sa short problem, no? Magkaroon tayo ng points, okay? Masyado siyang mahaba. No? I doubt naman napapagawa lahat sa inyo sa exam. Maubos na yung oras nyo nun. So dito muna tayo sa short problems. Okay, ayan. So for this problem, Decker Company, okay, kailangan nyo munang identify anong method yung gagamitin ninyo. So there are two ways to identify kung anong method. First is to check yung foreign operations. So for example, dito sabi niya, foreign operations operates independently. Okay, so yung first way natin, ma-identify na natin siya, di ba? Kasi kapag independent yung foreign operations, that means method 1 yung gagamitin or yung closing or current rate method. Okay? So under the method 1, all assets and liabilities are recorded at current rates. Okay? That's why here, to answer this problem, tinatanong ka kasi anong gagamitin nating rates? Are we going to use the current or the historical? So that's the question here. So since the foreign operations operates independently, so that means we have to use the rule in method 1. No? So the rule in method 1 is to use current rates for assets and liabilities, whether monetary or non-monetary. So the answer here is 645,000. Simply get all or simply use the current rates. Okay? So magiging letter A yung sagot, 710,000. If sinabi dito, sinabi sa problem that foreign operations is integral to the parent's operation. Kunyari ito, foreign operation is integral to parent's operations. Kung yun ang ginamit dito sa problem na to, then the answer would be 710,000 because all of these are non-monetary assets. Therefore, under method 2, we have to use historical rates. Okay? But again, for this one, ano siya? Current rates lahat kasi method 1 ang gagamitin. Okay, so next problem. Again, sabi niya, foreign operation is integral. So that means method 2 ang gagamitin natin or yung temporal or remeasurement method. Okay? So kapag ganun, ang rule natin, kapag monetary assets and liabilities, we use the current rates. So for example here, yung mga receivables natin, they are monetary assets. Therefore, we use the current rates. Okay? But for non-monetary assets measured at cost, no? For example, prepaid insurance and goodwill, okay? Non-monetary assets at cost, we use the historical rates. That's why we're going to use 55,000 and 85,000. Okay? So to get the correct answer, add nyo lang yung mga figures. So 200,000 here, okay, plus 100 ng long term, plus 55 the prepaid insurance, then 85 the goodwill. Okay? You will get 440,000. Okay, so what if? Paano kung sinabi dito, if prepaid interest, mag-iba ba yung sagot? Okay, kung naalala nyo, di ba, kinulay red ko siya kanina because that is like a special exception sa mga prepaid items. If prepaid interest class, we are going to use 50,000 or the current rate because prepaid interests are treated like monetary assets. Okay, so therefore, ano magiging sagot natin nun? So 200 plus 100 plus 50 plus 85. Ito na yung sagot. Okay, just in case lang, no, na prepaid interest ang sinabi. So 50. Okay? And so that's one way to identify kung method 1 ba or method 2. Another way, class, minsan hindi nila sasabihin na foreign operation. Minsan ang ibibigay sa inyo is the functional currency. So for example here, sabi niya, assume that the LCU is the subsidiary's functional currency. So for example, dollars. Okay? Dollars daw yung functional currency. So based on yung chart kanina, no? Kapag ang LCU or kapag ang functional currency is in terms of LCU, for example, US dollars or Singaporean dollars, then that means that means we have to use the current rate method or yung method 1. Okay, that means the foreign operation is operating independently. But if the functional currency is in Philippine peso, okay, then that means the foreign operation is integral or method 2 ang gagamitin. Okay, so hindi lang foreign operations yung pwede nyo maging clue, pati yung functional currency that will help you identify anong method yung gagamitin. Itong method 1 sinulat, tinype ko lang to, no? Pero sa problem, hindi sasabihin na method 1 or current rate method. Okay, so for illustration lang yan. So for example here, in answering number 1, since it's method 1, lahat yan, all monetary or non-monetary assets will be recorded at the current rate. So simply the answer for number 1 is the total of the current rates. Lahat naman to class assets. Okay? But it is a mixture of monetary and non-monetary assets. But for method 1, regardless if it is monetary or non-monetary, we are still going to use the current rate. So therefore, ikunin na lang natin yung total. So that's already the answer. Okay? Now, dito naman, Philippine peso is the subsidiary's functional currency. So that means sinusundan niya yung parent's currency. Okay, so that means we have to use the temporal or the measurement method. So we use method 2. Okay, so the answer here is 1,790,000. Paano nakuha yan? First, let's identify if it is monetary or non-monetary. Okay, gamitin natin letter M if it is monetary, NM if it is not. Okay, so this one is monetary. Prepaid interest. So sabi ko sa inyo, di ba, this is the exception. Okay, this is prepaid items are generally non-monetary. Again, prepaid items are generally non-monetary. Ito mga to, prepaid rent, prepaid advertisement, or whatever prepaid it is. They are normally or generally non-monetary. This is the exception, itong prepaid interest. Okay, ang prepaid interest, that is monetary. Okay? Mamaya na natin ito pag-usapan na yung mga kulay dyan. Ito muna, monetary or non-monetary. Diyan nakakarto pag naging red. Ano na lang. Asterisk na lang. Para alam ninyo na special item siya. Patent. Okay. Fixed assets and intangible assets, they are usually non-monetary. Okay? So yan, patent, ano pa? Trademarks, tangible assets, goodwill, intangible assets din yan. Customer list, intangible assets, and buildings, fixed assets. So lahat yan, non-monetary. Okay? Marketable securities at cost. Yan, non-monetary din yan. Kasi at cost siya. Actually, kahit itong at market value, no? Marketable securities at market value, it is also non-monetary. However, it is measured at fair value. So isa to dun sa binanggit ko sa inyo na parang special item natin. Okay, if it is non-monetary item at fair value, pero trading securities siya, okay? So yes, it is a non-monetary asset, but we have to use a different rate. So balikan natin to later. Ito muna, inventories. Inventories are generally non-monetary, except if they are measured at fair value. Deferred charges, non-monetary. Okay, accounts receivable, definitely monetary. And usually mga receivables natin, whether short-term or long-term, they are monetary. Okay, ayan. So we're done classifying kung monetary ba siya or hindi. So ang rule natin, tanggalin ko muna ito. Ang rule natin, so last problem na lang to na class for this recording. Ang rule natin is kapag monetary, current rate ang gagamitin. So identify muna natin mga monetary. Ayan, to 40,000. Prepaid interest, it's already considered monetary, so we use 10,000 here. Okay, asan pa yung monetary natin? Accounts receivable, also monetary, and of course cash, monetary. Okay, so monetary assets, current rate. Again, remember method 2 ang kino-compute natin, ha? Next, yung mga historical rates naman natin. Prepaid rent, non-monetary, therefore historical rate. Patent, lahat ng intangible assets, historical rates yan. So patents, trademarks, goodwill, ano ba? Customer list. And also our fixed assets, generally they are non-monetary at cost unless revalued yan. So walang sinabi, we assume at cost. Okay, may kulang pa. Ito, marketable securities, non-monetary at cost. Therefore, historical rate yan. Okay, so ito na. Marketable securities at market value. So sabi dun sa instruction, di ba, it should be historical rate on the fair value determination date. Okay? So anong gagamitin natin? Since it is a fair value at the determination or the historical rate on the fair value determination date, kailan ba tayo nag-measure ng fair value? Di ba at the end of the accounting period, which uses the closing rate, no? The closing rate is also equal to our current rate. So in short, kapag mga non-monetary asset at fair value, okay, we use the fair value determination date. So in this case, we use the current rate. Okay? Pag marketable securities at market value. So again, ano to? Medyo kakaiba to, ha? Wait ng ibang kulay. Ayan na lang. Para alam niyo na special item siya. Actually, ito, special item din to, prepaid interest. Because normally, class, prepayments or prepaid items are non-monetary. So this is the exception. Next, inventories. Ayan, normal na yan. Historical rate. Okay, and deferred charges, non-monetary also. So ayan. So pag-add nyo lang lahat, ito ko na lang lagay. Wala. Sorry, hindi ko pa kasi na-process. Let's add them. Okay, so we have 240 plus 10 plus 80, 170, 130, 55, 210, 110 here plus 95, 85, 15, 170 and 420. So, try nyo lang i-check. Pag inad nyo yung lahat, that should give you itong 1790. Double check ko lang. Okay, tama naman yan. Nasulat. Okay, so other problems or other foreign currency translation problems will be uploaded in a separate recording para mas marami kayong reference, okay? But please do watch them before your prelim exam.